Hey, everybody who's here for the Great River School Board meeting. We're just correcting a little link diversion where our board agenda temporarily had a different link than our public calendar link. So we're bringing our board members into this meeting. Thank you for your patience and your attendance and your good humor. And though our board members were ready to convene on time in the other meeting, we're bringing them all here to the public meeting that was posted. So thank you for your patience, and we will just keep that working. Oh, Stacy, you are muted, but that's probably okay.
Yeah, no, I was going to say there were also some attendees, not just board members at that other meeting. So I directed everybody to come to this link and changed to the link in the agenda as well.
Great. And so we have not yet started the official board meeting. We're waiting for our board members to come and form a quorum, a virtual quorum.
Sam, do you want to make me host and I can promote board members to panelist? Unless you want to do that. You're muted, Sam.
I'm promoting folks to panelists as we speak, but then yes, I'll make you host very soon.
Okay.
All right, well, that was simple.
All right.
Okay.
Welcome, board members.
Yay.
Over to you, Jenny.
So learning from experience, because I am capable of learning things. Could someone else share their screen before I completely crash Zoom like I do every time I try to share? That would be great.
I just said
and all you really need to do is share the agenda and then start clicking the stuff in the agenda.
Any one of the panelists may share.
Mike also
Any
is here
panelist
too.
you may.
Is Mike promoted to panelist yet?
Thank you, Maddie.
Thanks.
Yep, sorry everyone about the multiple Zooms, or get to the right one so we don't get bombed out when they have to go for the forum. Okay, let's see. All right, bear with me. Sorry, everybody. Did we find Elizabeth? We're
Yes.
both Elizabeths up here now. Okay. Ah, there we go. Great. Okay.
We still don't have Sarah. Is that correct? Nope, Sarah's there.
I saw Sarah's name.
Yep, she's on as a panelist.
All right. Oh, I can't.
I'm just trying.
Okay.
I'm using two computers, and so I was trying to figure out what should be muted, what should not.
Ah, yes, the dreaded echo. Oh, hello, Kitty. Stay here. Okay. Okay, if I look at, I think we here? We have a lot more attendees than usual. Oh, I do see Scott. We need to promote Scott. All right, everybody, bear with us. Just get everybody loaded up.
I was wondering if we just wait to promote Scott until it's his time to present.
That's fine. I believe that's just fine. Yeah, Elizabeth, and just look. Mike's here. Okay, we've got Sarah. Jen's here. Oh, Lindsay cannot be here. We know that. Okay, so we're not waiting for Lindsay. Maddie, yep. Sam, Katie. All right, excellent. Welcome everyone. Let's call this meeting to order. It is 4:36. Oh, could someone please take notes, and could someone please be secretary for our board at some point, please? But with that said, could someone please just take notes for tonight?
I'll take notes.
Thank you, Elena. You take very good notes, by the way. I count on them. They're very, very well done. Mike has also done very excellent notes. Okay. All right, welcome everyone. We have called the meeting to order. This is the March 30th Great River School Board meeting. As we begin, could one of our board members please volunteer to read aloud the Great River School mission?
I will as soon as it comes up,
Okay, thank you.
because I don't have it memorized.
I'm not the only one whose internet is feeling draggy today.
This is a test to see how who knows the mission by heart.
I do.
Okay.
Great River School, a Montessori learning community, prepares students for their unique roles as responsible, engaged citizens of the world.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, another volunteer, please, for the board mission.
I'll read it. The board
Thank
of
you.
directors exists. Oh, sorry. The board of directors exists on behalf, I'm getting weird echo, of the public to ensure that the Great River School achieves the student outcomes for which it is chartered and provides exemplary stewardship of resources while at all times operating within the required parameters. Accordingly, as the governing body of the school, our intent is to refrain from co-managing.
Thanks, Elena. There's no echo for us, just so you know. I'm sure it's driving you crazy, but it sounds good to us. Next, does anyone here at the board have with anything on the agenda need to recuse themselves due to a conflict of interest? I am not hearing or seeing anything. Oh my gosh. Sorry, screwed up my view. All right, next, could someone please read the Great River School pandemic norms to remind us all of the crazy time we're in right now?
I can.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep. We need to acknowledge that our usual norms and systems may not be applicable during crisis planning. We are all accountability partners. We must hold one another responsible. We are being asked to do the impossible. We need to balance supporting staff, supporting students, and keeping our mental health. Perfectionism has no place in our process. We should have realistic expectations of ourselves and others. We may need to make decisions without our usual stakeholder input. We may make mistakes and missteps, but we need to take responsibility, repair any damage, and move on. We must publicly and internally support decisions once they are made and work to make outcomes successful. And finally, we should be able to openly disagree and be disagreed with and maintain collegial and productive relationships with our fellow leaders.
Thank you, Jen. I'll now move to roll call again. Because we are virtual, I will need a verbal reply from you for recording purposes, starting with Elena.
Here.
Elizabeth Alvarez.
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Sarah.
Here. You didn't hear all the other years.
Here. Jen, you're breaking up a little bit. It's totally garbly.
Robot voice, Jen.
You may just have to go video free, Jen.
The computer audio, is this better until it
Yeah,
isn't?
that's better. Yep.
All right, when this freaks out, I'll go back to phone. Sorry, everybody. I was on Maddie. Maddie, are you present?
Present.
Thank you. I am present. Jennifer Williams. Elizabeth Badillo Mormon.
I am here.
Thank you. And Katie.
Present.
Thank you, everybody. Okay. Whoops, sorry. 1 sec, my computer went nuts. Reminder, we do still have an open community member position. Next, in public comment period, again, welcome to the 16 attendees who are with us in this webinar format. We did not receive any emails. I did not, executive committee did not receive any emails indicating anyone wanted to get in line for public comment. So I have a hunch you just really want to hear the first read policy on the agenda, or maybe the 124E Charter Minnesota statute. And kudos to you for that. If, however, there is anyone who wishes to do public comment, I am stalling, waiting for my computer to open the file, and I am giving up on the file opening up. I'm going to paraphrase the public comment policy. Essentially, we have 5 minutes for public comment. So if you do wish to make public comment, please, I don't think you can raise hands, so please note in the chat. We'll see how many people we have, and we can divide the time up. And we'll just hold for a moment to see if anyone does wish to make a public comment to the board. Oh, thank you. As a reminder, as the board, we can listen. We may not respond, but we will listen. You will be heard. It will be part of the notes. Please, however, do not bring up any confidential information, including names of students or employees. And I do see Kayla does indeed have a quick public comment. Can we unmute Kayla, please?
Yeah, Kayla, you are unmuted. Do you want your video on?
You know what? I'm a hot mess. Let's keep it off.
Come as you are. Okay, go ahead, Kayla.
Yes. So I have a letter to the board from some staff on the 7-8 team. If I have it in a PDF version, if folks would like to read along, otherwise I can just read it with my voice. This letter is dated March 30th, 2021. 7-8 letter to the board. Due to the ongoing mistreatment of licensed and unlicensed faculty that indicates a lack of mutual respect, the signed 7-8 team asks for the board to direct Sam and Wendy to allow the 7-8 team to determine all licensed and unlicensed 7-8 faculty that will provide in-person gatherings, and that all further communication to the 7-8 families comes through and from the 7-8 team. The 7-8 team will maintain autonomy to design in-person gatherings. Formal in-person gatherings will start after May 17th, following a week of planning. I support this statement to the board, and there follows 12 signatures. Is this something that I can post or send to folks, or is reading this letter fine?
Can we include the PDF in the minutes?
Elena, I'm holding to double check that in
Thank
terms of the charter rules on that. So one moment. I finally got it opened here. Sorry. Oh, and Kayla, can you, even though I believe we know who you are, but could you please officially indicate your name, your connection to the school?
Oh, yes. So I am Kayla Kronfeld. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the 7-8 social studies guide when we're in person, but I am a humanities guide during this year.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. And Kayla, you can go ahead, if you would please email, you can email it to board if you'd like, or you could do executive at Great River School. We can accept materials, but they will not be included in the meeting minutes.
Okay. Thank you. I will go ahead and send an email to the board then.
Thank you, Kayla.
Yep, thank you.
And we do have 2 minutes left in the time period if there are other public comments. Just hold for a moment to see. All right, not seeing further requests come through. Let's go ahead and move forward with the agenda. Are there any urgent adds to the agenda that we need to note? And again, I would please call your attention down the agenda to what we have split off into the special meeting April 13th in order to keep this at a humane length meeting tonight. particularly considering the feedback we did receive from board members last month about not making it too long. So there may be an agenda item that is already there. And also please, the consent agenda in the same question only has in it the minutes from last month. So is there, looking at knowing we will be addressing the subsequent topics April 13th, is there anything urgent that we must, that the board needs before we can approve the agenda today? Aline, I do see your hand raised. I don't know if that was on purpose. Okay.
Yeah, it was on purpose, and forgive me. This is my first time doing this, and so if anyone else can inform me of like the procedure, or if I make any missteps in the procedure, let me know. I guess I feel that when the elementary made a move to kind of, or let's see, when the elementary was discussing any changes to their programming, the board did discuss this, and we held a listening session. And I noticed from my attendance at the 7-8 meeting yesterday and from the public comment period today that there is currently an ask for the board. And so I feel that that it is an urgent add to the agenda, and I would like to discuss whether or not the board can make a directive to the administration regarding communication about 7-8 learning. Is that the right way to do it?
So it sounds like, let me know if I'm getting this right, Alina. The request is in for this meeting tonight to add a discussion agenda item about 7-8 communication. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, so I do, just looking back, and again, this is, please bear in mind, what do we have with pandemic norms? Slightly new territory. I'm looking up, I'm getting some help text. So one part is, except for items on the meeting agenda, the board will not take immediate action based on comments made during the public comment period. So what I'm hearing is you're proposing we add it to the agenda, which I believe would counteract that statute about this part, this policy, excuse me. What I'm seeing now, our options are, okay. So, sorry guys, bear with me. So, Elena, let me ask it this way. Are you proposing a type of motion?
No, I don't think I'm proposing a motion. I'm proposing a discussion. And so my understanding of the public comment period would be that we cannot take an action at any, like the board can't take an action. But I guess I'm wondering if discussion is an action.
But Elena, I think you're making a motion that we amend the agenda to include.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I am making a motion to amend the agenda.
To throw it
yes.
to you.
Thank you.
Let me mention this too. Let me just throw one more out. Sorry to jump on the motion. We could call a different meeting for it as well. Or again, if you wanted to keep with that, and I'm not even saying it add to April 13th, we need to make it different. Or if you'd like, I'm sorry to interrupt, if you can restate, if you want to add the motion that we add this agenda item tonight. Sorry, Alina, please proceed.
I am making a motion to request that we amend the agenda to add a discussion of the 7-8 request tonight.
And the 7-8 request specifically about handling the learning model or communication?
Communication.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second that motion.
Any discussion needed prior to a vote?
Yeah, I'm gonna add in, I think that I need to recuse myself from the vote since I'm a part of the 7-8 team, but I would like to stress that it's really urgent and that the concerns and morale of the 7-8 team really need to be addressed, and they've come with a very specific request that I think really needs to be taken seriously and considered by the board.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I have a concern. I haven't seen that documentation yet, so I'm wondering if we can actually see that information first before we actually were to proceed with the discussion.
Likewise.
If Kayla is still present, I think she's emailing it to the board.
If Kayla has or can, if you can, Kayla, is she still on? Yep, email it to the board. We can also, if this vote passes, when we add it to the agenda item, we can link that, and I can make sure it's in our folder. So it's also part of the public. Thank you, Kayla. I see that you just sent it.
Okay, because I was thinking it's fair to say we need that document to discuss.
Correct. Yeah. So we can do that. We do have a second. Any other discussion prior to the vote?
Can we take some time to look at the document?
Sure.
Because if we're I think we should at least have the opportunity to look at the words of that,
okay.
and then decide if we have any more discussion to vote on talking about it later.
I agree with you. It's something that we'd have to look at in order to actually make a determination whether this is something that we can discuss during the board meeting or whether if we actually would have to create a special session.
But aren't we already? Okay.
So we have a motion on the table right now to vote on whether to add this as an agenda item tonight.
Right.
We are in the middle of discussion prior to the vote. Do we need any more discussion prior to making that vote about adding it to tonight's agenda?
I guess I would just ask a clarifying question. Are we going to be extending the meeting to allow for this discussion?
I believe we would have to. I don't see any wiggle room in this agenda.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I have a hard end at 6:30.
And I know Maddie, I believe, is out at 6 due to the upper elementary forum.
Has it been formally announced that we are having a second board meeting in 2 weeks? Because that went out in some communications, but was that part of a motion later on in the agenda about the second meeting?
I am checking the calendar.
Am I misremembering an email?
I would just call the question. There's a motion on the table, so
yeah,
there's a motion on the table that we're involved extending this meeting. So, already
to add this agenda item. Okay. Yep. We call in the question. That means we will now take a live roll call vote. I will attempt to not figure out how the best way to call people's names. Bear with me. Thank you. Jen.
Let's see. Is it yes or no? What is the
It is a yes or no for extending the meeting to add this agenda item tonight, to discuss tonight. That's the specific vote.
Yes.
Katie?
yes.
Elizabeth Bodillo-Mormon.
If I'm able to vote yes, but it directly impacts me, so I think it's a conflict.
Oh, you were going to abstain. I
You're gonna
apologize.
abstain.
Thank you. Thank you. That's okay. Mike? Oh, muted.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes, and I will come back after the other meeting if I can.
Okay. Elena?
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez?
Yes.
And Jennifer Williams votes yes. All right, the yeses have it. I will type in here. As I am typing to add the agenda, this agenda item, excuse me. Sam, where do we put it? Can someone tell me? Oh, hold on. Sorry, one moment. Okay. Okay, I'm getting some notes.
Welcome.
We are also going to have to vote to suspend our policy that prevents action based on public comment, if we indeed are making this letter part of the meeting. It looks like the most appropriate step would be to set up a separate meeting and hold off on public communication to families until after that meeting about this. We cannot add the document from the public comment period into tonight's agenda unless we suspend our policy on the public comment for tonight. I'm so glad that our authorizer is here tonight to witness this absolute tire fire that we are having. Sorry, Wendy. She's been here. I think she was here this fall too, and we had a tough logistical hurdle. Okay. So we have just voted to add it, which means we now need a motion, looking for any more notes, to suspend our public comment period, our public commenting period policy.
So moved.
Pardon?
I move to suspend the policy.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, another roll call vote. Please audibly say your vote. Sorry, now I've got multiple devices trying to watch. Okay. Okay, Katie.
Yes.
Elizabeth Badillo Mormon.
Yes.
Elena.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Maddie.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Jennifer Williams votes yes. So moved. We have suspended our public comment period that prevents action based on something presented during public comment for this meeting. Yes. Okay. Okay. The next question is, where do we put it? I would say.
You decide, Jenny. We don't have to vote on
Do
that.
I?
Vote on that.
Okay. Oh, thank God. Okay.
I would like to say maybe earlier than later because it looks like it's an urgent issue that
it
the
is
staff
urgent,
wanted to
but
discuss.
so are the next two items.
Yeah, they
So
are
I
too.
would say, how about after Wendy, before the finance committee? I'm going to go
How
ahead
about
and.
after the finance committee, out of respect for Scott's time, and then.
Oh, Scott, I'm sorry. Yes, so sorry. Yes. And before board elections. Okay. One moment, please. I'm just not even going to worry about trying to put times in. Okay. I don't even know what to call it. Governance, I guess. Sorry. Okay, I think. Okay, edit. I will get our document linked as well. As I look for it, how about the consent agenda? It currently has the February meeting minutes. Are we able to approve the consent agenda at this time?
I motion to approve it.
Sarah Hansen, seconds.
Any discussion needed on that?
Sorry, could you just say
Actually,
who motioned
sorry.
to approve? Sarah Hansen second, but who motioned?
Jen
Thank you.
Hammerhouse.
Is this a motion to approve the discussion? To approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, no. The question was, do we need to pull anything out before approval? The question is approving the whole agenda for this meeting.
Yeah. I motion to approve the agenda for the meeting, including the consent agenda item.
Thank you. It has been moved. And I'm sorry, if someone seconded, I did not hear you.
I can second.
Thank you. All right, roll call vote. What we are, this vote is again approving the agenda and the consent agenda. Let's see. Katie,
Yes.
Elena,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes, please.
Maddie,
Yes, thank you.
Elizabeth Badillo Mormon,
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez,
Yes.
and everybody's name just moved. Did I miss anybody? Apologies. Okay, good. I gotcha. All right, so moved. Agenda is approved. I'm continuing to make updates. Oh, look, I'm next. One moment. Let me do this first. Actually, everyone else can get to that email. Can someone else update the agenda with that letter, please? From Kayla, thank you. There's no need for me to do that. And go ahead and just put it into our public folder for this meeting for March, and then please get the link and link that baby in. Thank you. And I now need to share a screen so we can talk about interim head of school. Okay. Moment. All right. I am waiting for my file to come up. Okay. Let me know if you can successfully see this PDF. Anybody, please just speak out if you can see it.
Yep.
Yes,
All right,
Jenny.
thank you. Thank you. Couple quick notes before we progress on this to the board as well as to the attendees, because this is a public meeting. While it is technically public, this information is not necessary.
We lost you, Jenny.
Sorry, my laughter was unmuted.
That's okay. We need to laugh. Otherwise, we'd be crying right now. So
She's actually looking at the PDF. So
Yeah, we do see the PDF.
Oh,
this is a very suspenseful presentation, I must say.
I kind of wish I had dressed up.
Oh, Jen.
Jen, do you have as the other person on this? Do you feel like you can?
I am so not good at doing someone else's presentation on the fly. So I'm not.
Oh, okay, that's fine. It was just I know our time is really precious.
I
right now,
know, I know. Let's see.
Does somebody
Move on to a different topic until we get Jenny back. Looks like she just left the meeting.
Idea. Let's do that.
I would suggest, do we have a vice chair? Because if the chair isn't here, the vice chair should step in.
I'm here.
Okay. Mike, you should maybe move us on to
Yep.
another topic.
So let's see here. I'm actually
I will suggest that finance could go.
Yeah.
Scott
let's do that.
prepared and documents
Okay.
are ready.
Yeah.
So can we move on to the finance committee here?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks for screen sharing, Scott. I'll pitch it over to you to open it. You may be muted though, Scott, if you're talking.
Can you hear me now, you guys?
Yep, can hear you.
Hello?
We
Yeah,
can hear
sounds
you.
good, Scott. We can.
Okay, great. I don't know if my video is not working, but this is what you get. So February financials, we are 8 months through the year. We have as you'll hear from Stacy, at some point that enrollment is still strong, given everything that's happening with the pandemic. You are probably one of the rare ones where enrollment is still kind of holding. And so we have schools that are declining, both traditional and charters, and that's not the case here. So we did review the financials in more detail at Finance Committee, but kind of the big picture here is probably this last box, in that we're 8 months through the year, about 67% of the way through the year, and both our revenues and expenses are tracking slightly under budget. Okay, revenues will catch up a little bit between now and year end, but expenses, I don't think that they will necessarily. And so one of the things also on the agenda this evening is kind of looking at the FY21 revised budget. So in previous meetings, we've shown the working budget in the working budget column, and so this makes the same sort of appearance here in the second column. But this is also the budget that we're asking the board to view as the revised budget for the current year. And so at the end of February, our cash balance was just over 900,000. Super healthy. Sam and I have reached out to Phil, indicating that we will need another small line of credit come June. It's not that we need the line of credit, I don't think, this year to make payroll like we have in the past or anything like that. It's really to make sure that we meet all of our debt covenants at year end. And so remember, we have we don't have the largest fund balance of charter schools, in kind of that 14-15% range. And so we do need that line of credit to make sure that we meet our days cash on hand. And so Phil Hatley is aware of our needs from Sam and I, and so we should have no problem getting that here for the end of the year. What we anticipate is due from the state here is 635,000. Remember, that's our 10% holdback. We talked about this in previous meetings, but I don't think that there's going to be any change in that between now and June 30th. The state's budget is looking pretty solid, and we're not going to see any increase in the holdback between now and year end. The other big significant number, right, is our salaries and benefits payable. That number will continue to grow between now and year end for a summer payout. And so, big picture summary by fund. We're looking pretty good this year, and so you'll see that kind of indicated, in when we look at the budget files in a little bit. No real big overarching concerns this year from a budget standpoint. One of the things that we don't know yet is really related to some of this additional COVID money. We are going to get another allocation. We will have until the end of 2023 school year to spend that money. We have not put it in the budget yet because we haven't been able to apply for it, and we don't know exactly what the requirements are. But we do anticipate that showing up in the FY22 budget for next year. The check register, that we have this month, I think is also maybe a little bit shorter than we usually see. And so I'll just kind of scroll through it. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at the check register on your own, feel free to ask us any questions, and we'll get back to you kind of as soon as we can. But I think that there's nothing that stands out as super weird. Remember, the first part of our check register, for those of you that may be newer on the board, are all the wires that are going to be either payroll related or coming out debit card / kind of ACH transactions, and then followed by our actual checks that are coming out kind of down here. So I guess that's it for the financials. We're not anticipating, if you skip to the last page, we're not anticipating any changes from the state as far as our payments for the year. And then the big kind of budget item for next year and the year after for FY22 and FY23 is that Matt McElrath got the ADSIS application in. And so we have not heard back on that, but we're really hopeful that we hear back about that money soon. And remember that ADSIS is that alternative delivery to specialized intervening services. And then kind of at the state level, we are hearing some kind of rumblings at the House and maybe you've heard it as the board from Minnesota Association of Charter Schools or from Wendy or from others. But there is some legislation out there that could negatively impact us related to special ed. But we're waiting to see kind of how that all fleshes out. It's only in a House bill, it's not in a Senate bill. And so we'll just kind of have to see what pops up over the next 60 or 90 days, something like that. So that is my February financials. And like I said, we did review it in Finance Committee and recommend the board's approval.
There was a quick question that came up while Scott was talking. Phil Hatley is our contact at Propel Nonprofit Support Group. It's a group that does financing low interest loans for nonprofit organizations. We've used them over the last 3 years through our expansion project as our fund balance. We planned ahead, did not grow with our expansion.
And just sorry, everybody, I forgot to turn off my video before I shared. Just a quick point of order in terms of communications. The chat is for things like your audio doesn't work. If you have a question about something being presented or have an opinion, it needs to happen in public in this meeting out loud. We cannot be having board communications in chat. I don't think that's an appropriate use of a public meeting forum. So please make sure if you have a question, ask the question, please. If you have a comment, make the comment, please. We cannot have side conversations in chat. Except things like, why won't my slides work? Which it's because Zoom hates me. But other than that, thank you. Thank you, Scott, for your flexibility and jumping in.
Chair Williams, do you want us to go on to the budget, or do you want me to stop sharing screen?
I think I believe we should let you get done. Since
Okay.
you've already started, let's let you.
Well, I'm biased, but I'm a fan of that. So
go for it. It's a gift.
All right. So the next thing that that Finance Committee has for the group is kind of a summary of our FY21 revised budget. And so I didn't really talk about it in the financials, but we realized because of COVID that there are a number of changes, that are happening at Great River, right? Most of them are related to having less fun, less field trips, less transportation, that sort of thing. And so we put together hopefully a quick summary, and Sam, jump in when you want, or anyone from the Finance Committee, of course, but a quick summary of kind of the adopted versus our proposed revised budget for you, for everyone. And so on the revenue side, I mean, the big thing is sort of that enrollment stays the same at that 771 level. We might be plus or minus 1 or 2 or 3 pupil units at the end of the year, but that's nothing unusual that we see kind of on a regular basis. State special ed, we're still kind of budgeting at the same level. We're waiting on some ADSIS money and some other special ed funding to come through, but keeping that kind of the same as it has been throughout the years. I actually did lie. We are including some of the CARES and GEARS money, and realizing that we might not spend it all by June 30th, and that it might actually kind of be in next year. But if you recall, like when we had the CSP money, we don't get the revenue unless we spend the expense. And so the CARES and GEARS money, everything related to COVID should be a wash, essentially, where we spend the money, whether it's additional cleaning or PPE, and then we get reimbursed from the state. And so on the expense side, then we do have some increased substitutes, some increased salary on the expense line item, just to bring that in more into line with what we're actually spending here year to date. We've reduced our transportation expense. We've increased our tech spending, and we had already sort of noted that in our working projections throughout the year. Likewise, repairs and maintenance / leasehold improvements. We haven't had any, flooding or roof repair sort of stuff like we have in the prior years, but some money there. And then really the bummer, of course, is reducing the field trips and the transportation, kind of through the end of the year. And so kind of all those changes, when we boil it down, you know, we are kind of projecting, I think, any increase in the change in fund balance. And so you can see that here, kind of third line from the bottom, that we're seeing about a $50,000, you know, sort of improvement from adopted to revised budget, and sort of that projected fund balance is going to grow maybe 0.3% more. And there still might be some conservative numbers in the budget, like the CARES and GEARS money. I mean, the COVID money. If we don't actually end up spending that money, then our expenditures will be lower and our fund balance is higher. And so it kind of, you know, we won't be worse than that, I don't think. But I think that we could be, you know, back to that 14%, I think, you know, by the end of the year as well. So Sam, I don't know, did I miss anything, or Lindsay?
Well, Lindsay, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but the Finance Committee did speak about the additional contribution to the fund balance, and specifically, the members of the Finance Committee did take a vote and then directed me as head of school to make sure that we focus on keep making sure we meet our reserve goals, and making sure that we complete the year. So for things like, say, pay to recognize folks who have taken on, say, more in-person roles. That is something that I'm still going to be approaching and working with the Great River School Foundation on. But as we look toward next year and the next few years' budget, it is still our strategic goal to meet our 20% fund balance goal, to allow the school to make much more meaningful investments and improvements in long-term goals, whether that is increased base pay for employees, or capital investments or strategic investments. So we got to hit that 20% goal, and that's why that $50,000 additional contribution to the fund balance is showed where it's at. And then between Scott and I looking at the details, say, of the salary increase, for personnel and salaries, I think we went a little high, and I would be surprised if we spent all of that increase, but we wanted to make sure we were as flexible as possible. Frankly, in case in the spring, current employees requested virtual accommodations, and we had to be I wanted us to be prepared to be flexible enough to hire additional staff. So the FY21 revised budget you're looking at, you know, it's very late in a typical year for a revised budget, but with 2 months and a couple weeks left, there are still unanticipated costs that could come up, and so that's the summary.
And Lindsay is not
that anyone's
here tonight.
inspired to make a motion.
Oh, Lindsay's not here.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Lindsay's not here, just to call
So I'm
out.
glad I spoke up, but Lindsay can speak to it next. So we are asking for a motion to accept both the finance report and the finance and this revised budget, and they can be separated or paired in a motion.
Just for clarity, when at what time was the revised budget added to the board materials for this meeting? The document.
I don't know the answer to that.
Scott, I believe the revised budget at Finance Committee, it was part of the finances. It was shown as a column in finances, and I know that on Thursday evening, I asked Scott to link a separate document also, so that it didn't require, say, newer board members to know to look in a revised column for approval. It's typical for a revised budget to be shown in a single column in the monthly financial report.
Yeah.
In the past. It's also within the board's purview to push this forward or ask questions or send it back, of course.
I will motion to approve the February financials and revised budget.
I second.
Any discussion needed? Okay, roll call vote. We all know how to do this. Katie?
Yes.
Elena?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Sorry, everybody just moved on me. Jen?
Yes.
Matt T? Maddie? Thank you. Elizabeth Badillo Mormon?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez?
Yes.
And Jenny Williams votes yes. So moved. February financials and the FY21 revised budget are approved. Thank you, Scott, for your flexibility. I believe we don't have anything more for you at this time. So we will see you. However, we do have that extra meeting April 13th where we'll look at that FY22 draft budget preview.
Perfect.
Can't wait.
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, sir. And again, thanks everybody for the flexibility. Okay. All right, Jen, would you please share? And I will stay away from it. Thank you. And as we get it shared, as I was mentioning, just as a reminder, this is, again, Jen, just, your whole screen is sharing. Okay. Can we get one page, maybe? Oh, can I do that? No. So zoom in a bit. Is it possible to zoom a little more? You can still see the next page.
I will, and as long as I remember how to do anything.
Is this something that you'd have to like download and?
Well, as I was mentioning, it will go into our public folder after the presentation. You know what, Jen, I'm just going to turn off video and I'll share it because now it all turned into something else because it's a PDF, not a Google Doc.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me.
I can do it. Look.
Oh, look at that. Okay,
whoa. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So what I was mentioning, here we go. This information, while we are in a public meeting, is not yet public. We will be, depending on our board vote, if approved, we will send out a Great River internal only communication to advise folks as timely as possible. However, community-wide communication, we have been requested to hold off until at least noon tomorrow to allow the individual we are recommending to make personal contact with people before it hits the wires, if you will. So we do please request to treat this information with discretion, including our attendees. While we know it's public, it's just basically asking to just be respectful of someone's need to have an open conversation with people that they haven't been able to have yet. Okay, and then again, once we have presented this, it will go into and be linked into our agenda, and it will be available in the March 2021 board meeting folder. Okay, thank you. Next page, please, Jen. So our executive committee recommendation, before we get to it, I wanted to remind everyone how we got here, just to really remind people of the process we have taken and when it all started and what we have done in order to identify what we as the executive committee do believe is the strongest candidate. As an executive committee, we restarted the discussion on needing to identify new heads of school last September, approximately 15 years ago. October 27th, our board meeting back then, we presented 3 search models, 3 ways we could go with this process. And there was supposed to be a picture here, but we recommended as the executive committee, we go with what we called Model A, which was to hire an interim head of school and then execute on a permanent head of school search in the next school year and get it ready and start getting moving after or during this school year toward the end of this school year. That is what we showed the board. And then in November, we worked on our due diligence to understand what that would take and where we came from, frankly, because if you might recall, prior to the pandemic, we had started a head of school search, which was aborted largely in part due to the pandemic and all of the chaos. And also there was a lack of feeling of consistency and alignment on what we were looking for and how we were looking for someone. So as part of that, the executive committee spent a couple weeks getting stakeholder feedback. This included the program manager teams on November 5th. It participated in a family feedback forum to present the models and gain feedback from those attendees on November 10th. We had a listening session with Great River faculty and staff on November 16th. And I attended 2 community meetings with the upper adolescent and the 9th graders on November 18th, where again, what we did is walk through the models and the options, and again, what we recommended we do as a board. We also, Lindsay Weaver and I divvied up the 6 individuals who had participated in last year's initial head of school search and connected with them to learn from them their feedback and perspective and lessons learned, what worked, what didn't, what do we need to consider, etc. Key things that we did learn were the need for a transparent process and effective communication so people know what is going on and why we're doing what we're doing. And speaking again on behalf of the committee, I hope you have felt we have done that over these months. We have certainly tried to. At the November 24th board meeting, the Model A, hire an interim head of school and look ahead to the next school year to identify a new permanent head of school to begin in school year 22-23 was approved. On December 3rd, about 10 days later, we did post the position for interim head of school. That remained open through January, particularly in deference of the end of year and knowing that we wanted to provide enough time for everyone to see the listing and have a chance to apply. So concurrently, while applications were coming in, interview panel volunteers were recruited and identified. And I do need to note that Jen Hanlon-Ash was absolutely indispensable in all of this. If anyone isn't aware, she actually is a recruiter in her day job. She volunteered all of this time that would have literally cost us thousands and did a phenomenal job, full stop. This includes hosting, besides community communications, asking people to consider if they want to be an interviewer. She held an informational night on January 21st, providing information of what that meant to be on the panel and encouraging people to apply for consideration. And we do have a little more information coming about the composition of the interviewers. January 27th, the panel was selected based on who applied and working to get a cross section of what we felt represented the interests of the Great River community. In February, the executive committee, who served as the search committee for this interim head of school process only, screened the candidates. I'll have more details on that coming up in a moment. We did select 4 interview candidates. During the month of February, Jen conducted phone screenings with each of them. They all continued on to the panel interviews. And we ended February with a rubric based on the standard objective interview questions and assessment, a rubric of the candidates and how they came across, how they were assessed by the interviewers and by those of us who also screened them. In March, we selected 2 finalists. They also had interviews with JD Edwards, our HR associate at Great River. And as most of you are aware, on March 9th, they participated in a community forum presentation where everyone got a chance to meet them. And we also solicited Great River community feedback at that time. And that brings us to here, big yellow box, the executive committee recommendation. Looking ahead, the interim head of school, if approved, will begin July 1st. That is the beginning of school year 21. We have had active discussions though about some training that may occur prior to that, but in terms of officially being part of Great River, it would be July 1st with that school year contract. Okay, next page, please, Jen. Just to reiterate how much went into this, because I don't want anyone to think there was anything shortcut about this. We did receive 15 applications for the interim head of school that were reviewed. We used the below screening rubric to assess the strength of their candidacy, resume, cover letter, and references. You can see we had this rubric this was the executive committee, all 4 of us assessed the candidates based on these areas. These are not all necessarily weighted the same. Some were nice to have. But we did that. We then compared across the 4 of us, and again, how everyone stacked up, and we identified fairly uniformly the 4 interview candidates. Next page, please, Jim. After that, we identified the 4 interview candidates who were then interviewed by the interview panel. And the panel consisted of 10 members, 6 out of the 10 self-identified as non-white. All were experienced working with, parenting, or being students in elementary through upper adolescent levels, because we did have 2 students. They were adolescents. We had 3 Great River parents, and we had 5 Great River employees, which included faculty as well as administrative staff, including our own Stacy Krieger here on the board. We also had a cross section. We had a license guide, we had Montessori expertise, and we had IB expertise as well within this group. Again, Jen managed this process. She had interview guides. There was interview prep for the 10 interviewers. They were assigned a group, a cohort with which they interviewed the 4 candidates. They were assigned questions, although everyone again did assess the candidates' responses to all of the questions, not just their own, but they were standardized so that the candidates did receive the same questions from the same group, if that makes sense, within a group, that they were done the same. So we worked to eliminate as much confounding variables as possible. We then did a round 1 rubrics assessment, by which we then took the numbers, and by we, I mean me, because I love data and I love Google Sheets and Excel. That took that then to again come up with a ranking of those 4 candidates. And again, pretty consistent. We identified 2 finalists who then the community got to meet. And next slide, Jen. Finally, our 2 finalists presented in the community forum. We had feedback submitted by 125 Great River community members. And that went across, we had some students, we even had a couple elementary students. We had parents or caregivers, excuse me, we had caregivers, and we had Great River staff and faculty, as well as community member. Single community member, Katie, our board member. Thank you, Katie. With that, we also reached out to ensure we had specifically received feedback on the 2 finalists from the program managers, from our BIPOC parent advisory group, as well as ensuring that all board members had indeed taken a moment to provide feedback before we got here. Using all of that, we were able to finalize our recommendation. And go ahead, Jen. And we recommend unanimously David Nunez to serve as the Great River School interim head of school for school year 21 to 22. I just got chills saying that. It's so nice to finally say something about it. By way of explanation, next slide. We know these are a lot of data-driven people. We did want to let you see that David was an extremely strong candidate across the board. In the initial screening for the 4 of us, he was in the top 2. He met or exceeded all requirements. The one that has a little yellow bar instead of a green check mark is specific Montessori experience, but he does have a lot of pedagogical experience that is similar in terms of constructivism, peace curriculum with Montessori. In the interview panel, he was tied for first place across all, when we aggregated all 10 and took and averaged the rankings. Within the community forum presentations, including within the different groups, he had the highest average ranking. And then finally, when we double checked with our 3 stakeholder groups, the board members, our program managers, who will of course report to our interim head of school, and our BIPOC parent advisory group, the average ranking again was David #1 over our other candidate. So we feel very confident and very enthused and excited about David as a candidate. Go ahead, one more slide there, Jim. He has experience running a school. He made a great impression with pretty much everyone who interacted with him through this process. And our next action, obviously now, is to have any questions or discussions, but the action needed tonight is to vote on the approval to hire Mr. Nunez as our interim head of school. We will open the floor. Thank you, Jen. And everyone is muted in case you think you're saying something.
Well, one thing that I want to say, Jenny, having been a member of the first group in the intro, in like the hiring, trying to figure out how to, I am just really impressed with the professionality and the information that's been given. And thank you so much, Jen Ash, for coming on as a professional to assist us in this work. I'm really grateful that you've shared with us a lot of data just now and about it. And I feel like this is one of those things that we could not have gotten too many communications about, and we got a great number of communications about. So I really value the work that the search group and the executive committee has done. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Sarah. Very gratifying. Elena, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Sarah said. I really appreciate how responsive the search committee was to the identified needs of the stakeholders and your efforts to really engage in a thorough process with gaining community feedback. And so thank you so much for all of this work.
Thanks, Lena. Any other feedback, or we do need to, on this agenda item, move to a vote?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? And I again, I appreciate everything that went into this. I'm wondering on the interview panel, the 10 interview panelists, they actually participated in the decision of who to move forward? Or was it, how was that transition made from interview panel to executive committee recommendation?
That's a great question, Katie. They provided independently of each other their assessments of the candidates. We as the executive committee then sliced and diced to determine. So the interviewers do not know how the candidates ended up in comparison to others. We took their notes, we read their notes, we took their scoring, and we interpreted. Does that help?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, their feedback was really important, and not the only feedback, because Jenny already mentioned all the other ways that we got some feedback, but it was really helpful for us moving forward. But they will be surprised as well. We haven't said anything.
I'm comfortable putting forward a motion to approve the executive committee recommendation to hire an interim head of school. David.
Seconds. Okay, any more discussion needed? All right, let's take a vote. Roll call vote. Jen?
Yes.
Jennifer Williams also votes yes. Mike?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Elizabeth Badillo-Mormon?
Yes.
Elena?
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez?
Yes.
Sorry, can you say it again? Because I got a chime right when you open your mouth. It was amazing.
Yes.
Thank you. It's like, hello. And Katie?
Yes.
So moved. We have an interim out of school. As a reminder, we're going to let obviously David know ASAP. We will send out an internal Great River communication to, well, I think it's going to be tomorrow morning, isn't it? No, I'm going to email tonight. We're going to send out a note with a little video from David, I believe tomorrow morning. But as much as everyone who's listening, please try not to share outside of Great River. We want to give David the chance to share his news with his team tomorrow morning.
Yes.
So, and then community communication tomorrow afternoon. So.
At noonish. Yeah.
Noonish. Yep.
Thank you for that consideration of David and the world that he's coming from and the world he's coming to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited. It's very exciting. Okay. Wendy Swanson-Choi, can we promote Wendy? Speaking of transitions, we thought this would be perfect timing to bring in our authorizer to remind us what it means when we have transitions. And it's a great opportunity to make sure we do this right, we do this appropriately. And Wendy, if anyone has not seen her on a meeting before, is an amazing resource. And we're very, very fortunate to have you here. Thank you for your patience with us, Wendy. And the floor is yours. And thank you again. Sam, is there anything you want to add before Wendy starts about introducing her or anything?
Oh, well, Wendy Swanson-Choi, I don't think I can do you justice in an introduction, but my understanding is that you're here to orient our school board as to the relationship with the authorizer, especially in the context of a transition of school leadership. So thank you so much for taking your time and joining us.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, my camera is not working. And
welcome
so,
to the board meetings. Nothing ever works. We're thrilled you're here.
so, but I hope that you all see a big smile and think about my smiling face as I'm speaking. So I wanted to start out first by recognizing all of the hard work everyone is doing this year, and in particular, going above and beyond in a really difficult year to keep things moving forward in terms of meeting your mission and vision and doing a very high quality search for your interim leader, which is obviously one of the most important works of the board. So I just kind of reiterating what everyone else has said. I also really appreciate that you took time, for those of us who joined today, to review everything you did up to this point. Anytime you do that, it always helps because, people see little snippets. Sometimes they can't understand all the work and all of the steps and all of the policies and laws and everything that you thought about and followed. So I really want to recognize that, and so thank you all for how hard you work, and for keeping things moving forward in terms of meeting your mission and vision for your students and their families and staff in a really hard time. So I wanted to just start by saying that. And then, second, I really just wanted to touch base. Sometimes when there's a big, when there is a change and a big decision and things move forward, there are so many other related pieces to keep in mind. So I just wanted to touch base and make sure that, first of all, that I understood where everything was in terms of moving forward with the school leader, the interim leader. And then also just remind everyone a little bit about some of the different documents that a change in leadership might touch. So I know that you're already aware because you did a very good job reviewing everything that you have done thus far to get to where you are. And so I can see that you considered your policies and the law and getting this far. And it's really clear that Jen, you're an asset on the team for them as well, in terms of helping them understand, helping everyone understand some of the different probably laws and things to follow when moving forward. So just a couple of things to point out, which I'm sure everyone's aware, but again, when there's a step forward, there's all these other pieces sometimes that are aligned. And so one of the things, important to keep aligned. So one of the things is just a reminder to look through, for example, our contract. So for example, in our contract, there's an org chart and there's a section called governance, management, and administration. And so just a reminder to look at that and make sure that things don't get out of sync. It doesn't mean that what's in the contract is in stone, but if something is going to be different, it would be important because the contract is a contract. So it's important if something is going to become at all out of sync that you reach out and let me know so that we can talk about it. And if we need to do some revision, go through the proper process in order to make any revision that potentially would be necessary. So I don't even necessarily see anything that is out of sync, but I'm just bringing up that it's always important to keep in mind we have that contract and there are sections in the contract that do touch change in school leadership or may touch a school leadership change. Another one to keep in mind, of course, as you all well know, is 124E, which is the charter school law. And where that touches working with the school leader, of course, is where some of your most important roles and responsibilities are in terms of evaluating, right? And developing a job description. There's very specific areas, 6 different areas that are cited in statute to make sure to include in job descriptions. And then, they become the basis for the evaluation. So the evaluation ends up as well, including those 6 different areas. One of them is the relationship with the authorizer. And so, and you've always done awesome with that. So, but you know, just making sure that whoever comes in, because your leader has always done a wonderful job with keeping me posted, and you know, it's just going to be important to make sure that whoever comes in just is aware of those different expectations that are laid out in statute that form the basis for job descriptions and evaluations. So I just thought I'd share a couple of examples where this, where a change in leadership can potentially touch some documents that would be important to maintain alignment with, in terms of our work together, and all of your work. So are there any questions? And those are just a couple of examples. I'm happy to put together kind of a list of things, but you know, I think you probably already know the list if you think about it. But you know, so pretty much it would be our contract, it would be our performance framework, because there are very specific goals and data that needs to be updated, and of course the that go into the decisions about the renewal of the contract. So they're very important for a new leader to understand as well. The section, like I said, on governance, management, and administration, 124E in particular, the section about administration, and things like data practices, which I can tell you're very sensitive to. So, you know, what can and can't you share? And as you said, everything that you've talked about today is public. And I really appreciate the way that you framed it for people, because even though it is, it's important for people to understand the context of the meeting today. So again, I appreciate that. And so I guess, you know, other things might be, I guess, and then of course your policies. So whatever policies this leadership change might touch would be important as well. So with that, I guess that's all I really wanted to touch base on today. But again, just really recognizing all of your work, going above and beyond, you know, putting so much thought and professionalism into the process of the leadership search, and especially during this time when it probably has not been always easy to do so. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Can I pop in and just mention this to the board?
Yes.
It relates to what you just said, Wendy. And we also talked last week, and you gave me some of this information in advance that was helpful. I've started putting together and shared with the executive committee, Wendy and Sam and Stacy at this point, and happy to share it further, a transition planning document for a leadership transition planning document that has many, if not all of the things that you mentioned, because we talked about it last week, and then some. We've been gathering input on what the managers group needs or feels that they need to know about, and we want to make sure that as much information as possible is extracted from Sam's brain onto in some place that we can all find. And so this is going to be a group collaborative project. It has been and it will continue to be for the next few months, but it is in process. And all the things that you mentioned, which some of which are quite new to me as I'm new to the board as well, and I don't know if others are, but it's, you know, we'll have a systematic way of going through and making sure that we've covered off on those things. So I just wanted to let the board know that that's in motion.
Jen, if other board members were interested in participating in that process, where would we find information on that?
Yeah, I'll share the document with you after the meeting. And you can take a look. I mean, what we're doing is, there's two parts to it. There's the documentation side, and then there's the like the onboarding planning side of it for David. And that's some of that we're still working on, but the different pieces of documentation, it's quite a lengthy list of things. Some we already have. In fact, quite a bit of it we actually do already have. We just need to look at it and refresh it and maybe put it all in one spot so that when David comes on, he is able to really find everything easily and get up to speed quickly. So I'll share that with you after the meeting tonight.
For other people too. I am personally interested, but like, would anyone just
I'll share
email
that with the
you?
board.
Okay,
I'll just
thank
share
you.
it with the board. It's not a secret. There's nothing secret about it.
Okay,
Or,
sure.
it's totally.
Thanks.
It helps you. More eyes, the better. You know, we don't know what we don't know, so we'll keep going.
Thank you.
And I remind folks too that this is kind of, these conversations tend to also be ongoing with the executive committee, as we're also obviously committed to this transition. And those are public meetings, and our next one is Thursday. So if you're not sick of us by tonight, we'll be back. But those are in the calendar as well.
Yeah.
And always welcome. Yep. And then we can like have back and forth too. It's not as formal as board meetings. Well, Wendy, thank you so much. Again, guys, this is a perfect chance. Ask your authorizer. Is there any other burning questions or?
Thank you, everybody. And I had mentioned to Jen, and sometimes it is a good idea when you're going through these primary documents, foundational documents, even just taking a highlighter and just highlighting wherever you see something that could potentially, you know, touch a change in leadership. It will help you avoid problems later on. So it's just a thought. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. We always love having you. So grateful. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I know we probably got some people that, yep, here goes Sam. I think we're going to miss Maddie for a little bit as well. Upper elementary family orientation. I've got a 6th grader. I can't wait to get out of here. So it's pretty exciting. All right, so moving on, bear with me one moment. Okay, I know Sam had to leave, but he did give us some feedback. Moving on to our next agenda item, which was the letter that Kayla presented from the 7-8 guides. Sorry, I'm reading and moving at the same time. We have a response. And what we need, however, is I would like to paste this language of the response and again, in the spirit of transparency and collaboration into the agenda as we discuss. But we are going to need a vote for that. Hint, hint.
Just point of order, Jenny.
Yes, Sarah.
Is it that we have a response already from the board, or is it that we have a public comment to which we are going to respond?
Thank you. I would say it is a supplementary feedback from Sam to contribute to our discussion. How's that?
Response to the public comment that we suspended the public comment policy on.
So we can put whatever we want on the agenda now.
That's good. We can only do whatever we want with the public comment. But I just want to make sure that the language is clear, that we have a current head of school response to the public comment that we have allowed into discussion for our meeting.
Well, and that is what
can you tell him
making a motion on? Yeah.
So you would like a motion to accept the response?
Adding that into this agenda, like we have the letter linked. Thank you for helping me and my brain.
And I move to include the response from the head of school to the comment given to us during the public comment period.
Second that.
Second it. I'd love to see it when I get back.
Okay, thank you, Maddie. We will do a roll call vote. We are still at quorum, so we're good. Again, audible vote, please. Jen,
Yes.
Elena,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Elizabeth, Alvarez, sorry,
Yes.
Elizabeth Badillo Mormon.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Williams votes yes. So moved. Hey, let's see. Why don't, so one of us needs to get it in there. All right, I'm going to see if I can do this without breaking it. All right, waiting on that. Why don't we open for, no, tell you what, I want to do this part first because this is, what I see is there's a two-parter of considerations within this letter. Has everyone been able to link to the letter now that you can actually view it?
I'm also wondering if I can ask for support with note taking. I realize I sometimes have a really hard time participating in note taking at the same time, and I would like
will
to
do that,
participate. Thank
Elena.
you so much, Mike. I really appreciate
Mike.
that.
Oh, shoot, I didn't put it up in Drive. All right, well,
You're waiting
who's
to upload
next?
it to the public drive, right?
I'm trying to, yes, so that I can link it to the letter too. Okay, here we go.
Could you also send it in an email to the board, because then we could open it up? I'm having a really hard time reading the shared screen.
You are, okay.
Or put the link in the chat box.
Computer.
Are you talking about the email that Sam sent out, or?
I'm talking about the response. Did he send it out in an email? And I just
Yeah, it was sent out via email. So if you check the email, it should show up.
I don't have one.
Yeah, me neither.
It may have just gone to executive
Oh,
committee
okay. Yep, I see it.
so that we could upload it. Oh my God. Okay, it's coming.
Sorry about that, here, Sarah.
No, that's fine. I'm really happy to allow the executive committee to do their work with the information they have. I've been on executive committees. I know you do a lot.
Suddenly it becomes impossible when you're on the spot to remember how to like upload something or anything.
All right, I want to make sure we get it publicly linked, and then I'll go ahead and forward it as well. But I do want to make sure that it is first and foremost publicly linked. It is in the folder now under 8 March 2021. It says response 7-8 letter. I can't read the rest. It ends HOS. And I'm now going to link it within the agenda document as well. Okay, I swear I'm going to. Because that way it's both the letter as well as notes. Here we go. Really gonna do it. Okay. Okay, I think we have it. All right, so we are now in discussion mode, board. And if we look ahead, I'll just go ahead and start. I don't mean to act like I have answers here. I'm just gonna go ahead and start reading so that we can start talking. So I think down below in bold, we can see the notes from our head of school, Sam, regarding the notes in the letter. So looking at part A, so let's be specific about what is being requested in this letter. Number 1 is a request to determine staffing. And you see there, the signed 7-8 asked for the board to direct Sam and Wendy to allow them to determine who's going to provide in-person gatherings. Okay, so that is the program director, Tammy Lindberg. So what we may need to decide is Tammy now going to report directly to the board in order to do this?
Really? Does that?
That is what, well, that's what Sam is suggesting. We might need to decide if the current structure of Tammy determining staffing needs more oversight.
I'm wondering, I really appreciate you reading this out loud, and I'm wondering, would it be possible for either we read it out loud without interruption, or if we could have like a suspension of the meeting for 5 minutes where we could read on our own? Either way, I think I'm really trying to focus on this, and sometimes it's difficult for me with.
I would actually advocate for both. I'm happy to read it out loud. For example, I'm not in the lower adolescent 7-18, and so I'm happy to read it out loud and allow for people to read it in situ without responses.
Okay.
So I would actually like to read both of the things out loud.
Go ahead, Sarah. Absolutely.
The 7-8 letter to the board. Due to the ongoing mistreatment of licensed and unlicensed faculty that indicates a lack of mutual respect, the signed 7-8 team asks for the board to direct Sam and Wendy to allow the 7-8 team to determine all licensed and unlicensed 7-8 faculty that will provide in-person gatherings, and that all further communication to the 7-8 families comes through the 7-8 team. The 7-8 team will maintain autonomy to design in-person gatherings. Formal in-person gatherings will start after May 17th, following a week of planning. I support this statement to the board. We haven't read the names out loud before. I don't know if they need to be read aloud at this time. So that was the statement read in public comment period from Kayla Cronfield. And there's a listing of 13 names.
I'm wondering if we would, if you're reading the actual letter, if you actually would have to read out the entirety of it, because it's actually on the letter, rather than omitting that.
So Johnny Wakefield, Teresa Gorda Pritzvilla, Michael Flood, Ori Wasserberg, Julie Kesty, Scott S. Al-Slabet. He knows I have a hard time saying his name. Al-Slaben. Laura Machacek, Casey Patrick, Elizabeth Badil-Morman, Audrey Ronhart, Kayla Kronfeld, Christina Sand, and Emily Blue. And this now is, I'm reading from our current head of school, Sam O'Brien, as a response to the letter read during public comment. Responses to requests from the 7-8 team. Yes, let's be specific about requests. A, determine staffing. This is the job of Tammy Lindberg, program director. We suggest that Tammy Lindberg, we suggest Tammy Lindberg is responsible for this. Board decides if Tammy is reporting directly to the board. B, communication to 7-8 families. This can come from the 7-8 team, absolutely. Tammy Lindberg should oversee these communications. We can remove the 7-8 families from our communication this week with adolescent families. Communication should still go this week to 7-8 families. C, yes to design in-person gatherings. The 7-8 team should do this. Tammy Lindberg should still accountable for the planning process. 7-8 team should lead the planning. D, yes to May 17th start date for in-person learning after a week of planning. The week of planning must meet MDE requirements to allow in-person opt-in for students, and that is why we have the option for up to 5 planning days for teachers to create models that allow students to opt into in-person. We are in full support of this. Need to communicate planning dates to 7-8 families before April 5th, 2021.
Thank you, Sarah. So I see when I read this, complete agreement from from the head of school on these requests in response to this public comment. I think the open question is in terms of Tammy right now, I believe works directly with Wendy Fisher. And do we believe that remains appropriate, or do we need for this direction to change?
I have a question.
Sorry, yes.
My question is that it's not clear from the letter that was sent if Tammy is part of this request or not, because her name's not on it.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I don't know that Tammy is formally a part of the request. She's very much involved in this, but in respect for her role as kind of a middle management, kind of the guides of 7-8 did not directly involve her in writing this letter. So she was intentionally kept out of it.
Okay.
But I think that she is in support of the letter. However, I do think there's a misunderstanding in the letter in terms of, it sounds like from Sam's comment in number 4, yes to start date for in-person learning. So we have tried to clarify this at a couple different meetings about whether or not we are actually changing our learning models starting that week of May 17th or not. And we repeatedly been told, no, we are not changing the learning model. We're only having in-person gatherings. So the really important distinction here is that if we go to in-person learning, then any student who wants to opt in to in-person learning can do that regardless of our ability to staff it with our current staff. And whereas if we are able to design the number of in-person activities, and I will say, that we have a very serious interest in really supporting our students in their mental health and wanting to provide them as many in-person opportunities as possible. So there's not, nobody's saying, no, let's not do that. But we want to say is like, let's be mindful of really what the capacity is in the building and with the staff. And so we're objecting to like a completely in-person model. And in fact, we've been told repeatedly that no, that's not what the plan is. The goal is to provide as many in-person experiences for the students as possible, which we agree with, but we want to make sure that we're doing that within our capacity. And one thing that's not really coming clear, I guess, in the letter is that we have concerns really about the EAs, the educational assistants, who are really, our hourly staff who've been on site and who are feeling really, really mistreated in particular, and really want to be able to have some say over what they're being asked to do and make sure they're being treated with respect. And at this point, I would recommend that Tammy, yes, report to the board, because there is been a clear disruption in the relationship and in the communication, and it is not functional.
Elena, then me, then I'm so sorry, Elizabeth A. and Katie. I don't know who was next on the hands. I missed those. Wait, just Katie.
Mike, would you be willing to switch notes? Did you get the?
So you can.
I do. I'm actually opening it up. I've also
Thank you.
been typing up my own notes
Perfect.
as well throughout the meeting. So.
Thank you. What I noticed when I read the letter is kind of building off of what Elizabeth Badillo-Mormon said. The letter states the concern being a lack of mutual respect and then lists the requests. And I think I understand that as a board, our employee is the head of school, Sam O'Brien. And so if we're making directives to him. And I feel like what I also see in this letter, based on Elizabeth's comments, based on my own observations from attending the meeting, is a need for the head of school to clarify responsibilities of the program directors. And because in this response from Sam below, it states very clearly like what Tammy is responsible for. And it was pretty clear to me, just speaking from my individual perspective last night, that there was a lot of misunderstanding around that. And so I guess I would also support a directive in like clarifying or documenting or like having some kind of clear reporting structure so that the program directors understand their role better.
Okay. So 2 notes. I would just reiterate as a reminder, as the board, part of our charter is not co-managing. So some of the things being brought up, the best we can do is tell our head of school, go figure this out with your staff. Need to make that clear. We cannot insert ourselves as HR. With that said, I do want to call out, there's some pretty dramatic language in this letter that cannot be overlooked. So there are 13 signatories who have literally cited ongoing mistreatment of staff. And no one has contacted anyone prior to this letter. There is no record that I have been advised from Sam that anyone has contacted him to announce or advise of their mistreatment, which tells me the conflict and grievance policy is not underway. And that cannot be overlooked. This has to now be investigated by the board, as we do have mistreated staff. And so I believe the next step is executive committee, 13 interviews with the 13 signatories. Yeah, Kayla's on there too. To understand what is this ongoing mistreatment of faculty. It's not just once, it is ongoing mistreatment. And where are we at with the unsatisfactory resolution via the conflict and grievance process? So I'm not sure if that takes a motion or if we just have to acknowledge that the executive committee must now follow up on that and then come back with a report on what happened. But that is extremely troubling. And it'll be very important to flesh out precisely what that is talking about.
I just want to point out
that if need be, we can bring in. I'm sorry. If need be, we could bring in someone to review and ensure if it's because it is involving head of school. If need be, we can bring in a third party to investigate that if it needs to be more objective.
Jenny, I'm actually just wondering if it's not a motion, but just more of a task for the executive committee to just look into it.
Yeah, I don't think it's not a motion. We don't have an option. There's no vote on this. We have to do it. Full stop.
I also want to point out that our conflict resolution and grievance policy has been in a long process of review. And so I think it's worth noting that possibly one of the reasons why this is happening in this way is that, as you know, we have noted in many recommendations to the board that the policy needs to be looked at again.
Thank you, Elena. But the policy, however, is not suspended. There is a policy that is on record. So yes, no one is just saying from the policy. Frustration noted, but it still must be followed.
Jenny Williams, just refresh some of us who are new. Like what is the step? What is the proper step?
You say it was Jen, Katie, and then me.
Yeah, we've got, yep. It is on the website, actually. So if anyone wants to go under board policies, whatnot, scroll down and there is the conflict grievance policy.
Call it up right now and address some things.
Oh, thank you, sir. And then is it Katie?
I think it's Katie. I raised my hand after Katie, so.
Oh, okay, Katie, sorry, thank you.
Sorry, trying to unmute there. I guess my comments are similar to what Jenny stated, that these statements of ongoing mistreatment that are, and I don't see any specificity behind those. So I agree that this is something the executive committee should look into. I'd be personally curious to learn more right now, but it does seem to me like this should be an issue that should be looked into with some thought and not just in an open public forum like this. So yeah, I concur with Jenny's statement that this, those are strong statements to make on record. And so it is something that has to be looked at. I have two questions. It's meant to be a discussion. Two questions are, one is the timing of this. It feels to me like May 17th is getting very close to the end of the year. So it's about 3 weeks of school between May 17th and the end of the year, if my math is right. So I think that's something we should look at is, what is the motivating factor? Sounds to me like it's the mental health of the students and having some in-person opportunities for them to connect. So I think the motivation, Elizabeth, you acknowledge this in your earlier statements that you honor that need. So I think we want to make sure we keep the needs of the students in mind and the needs of, and balance that with the needs of the faculty and their ability to do their work in a way that they feel is safe. But I think that's just kind of helping us hold a little bit of perspective in this if there's any outcome. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Jen, did you still have your hand up or not? Sarah.
So I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is that I really want to focus on that this is what has been submitted to the board in our public comment. And while I am mindful of my own, while I'm not in 7-8, I am in lower adolescent. And so I have a faculty hat that I wear for that. And I have my own kinds of things for that. But I'm also trying to really keep my board hat on and to respond to the wording of this letter as it is presented and not hypothesize. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. I don't want to hypothesize about Tammy Lindbergh as the program manager's support or non-support of this missive. We don't have that in official documentation right now. It is worth a conversation, and I would hope that the executive committee would consider that any investigation that we do into the ongoing mistreatment of licensed and unlicensed faculty would include management, program management, and the rest of administration in those interviews.
I would assume also HR.
Yeah.
I mean, HR cannot be absent from.
No, right, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will also say that in response to the timing that Katie responded to, now I've got a little bit of my faculty hat on, but also a board hat. So the administration had made I don't want to call it a promise, but an intent to deliver any change in programming from distance learning to hybrid and those were like to in person. Like those are the three things that was proposed to us, not proposed. But anyway, there is definitely an intent of the administration to allow for 6 weeks of planning time for any change between one of those three programmatic structures.
Yeah.
And some of the language that I've seen that is not in here in this official request has been about agreements, and we don't have an agreement. Our faculty does not have an agreement with administration about any change. Our faculty do not, we are at will. We've gotten a lot of, I'm trying to speak now with my board hat on. We've had a lot of talk about like what that means. We do not, the faculty does not have a shared agreement with the administration about any change in program delivery system, even during this pandemic COVID time. And so what I'm seeing as a twister kind of thing on this is that it's felt emotionally and professionally like an agreement and a promise. And in actuality, it was an intent. And so there's a lot of nuance that I'm sensing there as a board member about what administration is trying to do, what the board is trying to do, and what the faculty heard and are hearing. So I think that that's something that needs to be addressed, and that's a communication problem, which is worth addressing. And the third thing is I have the grievance policy up. And if you want me to say something about next steps, I'm ready to do so whenever it is appropriate.
Thank you. All right, I think it's Elizabeth, me, Mike. Not Sarah. Elizabeth Video Mormon. Sorry.
Yeah, I will, I guess, two comments. One, well, I know that the board is not co-managing. I do think that the board of directors, it's been my experience on other boards, that if there is a rupture between the relationship between the head of school and a manager, that the board can opt to have that person, the manager, report directly to the board. So that has been my experience. So I would encourage us to consider that. And then, and I'm glad that you plan to investigate. I think there are a lot of things. I think that the directive to move to in-person learning for a change in model has caused a lot of things to come to the surface, and a lot of people have been holding back on creating a fuss or filing grievances for a long time, just trying to get through the year. And so there are a lot of things that have come to the surface in the course of these conversations, and I think they are really, really worth looking into. And so I'm glad that there will be a process to do that. And the final thing, I believe that Tammy is in attendance and may be willing to speak to whether or not she agrees with this with the request.
We can't ask her.
Okay.
No.
Like decide it along before we set the agenda. I would love to, but we can't.
Right, thank you, Elizabeth. I forgot, because I was so fired up about people being mistreated, that I forgot the other part I was going to mention, which was a clarification on Part D of head of school's response about the MDE requirements to have the 5 planning. That's because in order to not be penalized and be able to have those 5 planning days, that's only granted by the Minnesota Department of Education if we're doing an opt-in to a full in-person learning model. So that's where that was coming from. And that will require, if that's what the plan is, that's what it takes to get those days and have them be blessed by the Minnesota Department of Education. And if we do want to approve that, that is something the board would have to approve, because it is a change to the calendar. So that would be something we would need to act on very swiftly in order to get a calendar update and get communication out to the families. But that is entailing a commitment to in-person learning. So that's where that's coming from. And I just wanted to clarify that, and I forgot to earlier. Mike?
Sure, just typing up notes here.
Oh yeah.
So in regards to Jen's point here, HR, we have to get them involved. We need to investigate and understand what's going on. And like how we started our meeting, knowing about the pandemic norms, it is not during school norms, and there may be some steps that may have to be skipped or some processes that may need to be rushed. One thing we have to consider as part of the board, we have to consider our stakeholders, which is our students, our parents, and our community here. And just to kind of follow up with you, Jenny, in regards to Part D, is it full, like all students actually in person, or is it just part? Or because I understand that based off the survey, there was some that wanted to do part and some that actually wanted to do full. Can we get some clarification on that?
I don't know if I can, but my understanding is it would be anyone who wanted to could opt in, right? And so you can't mandate anyone opt in to in-person, but the idea would be the model changes so that it is available to all who wish to avail themselves of it. Please, and anyone who understands it better than me, please tell me, but that's my understanding of this convoluted thing.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you clarify? Can somebody please clarify for me what is being asked of 7-8? What is the actual request or mandate that was given to 7-8? What is being pushed back against? I don't understand the whole baseline premise.
So we received a directive last week, which basically said that we would be returning to what we understood to be in-person learning following the end of this learning cycle, which ends May 7th. And then earlier this week, we were told, no, we don't need, it's not a full-on learning model change. It's just offering in-person gatherings. And so there's been a real lack of clarity also from that end as well. So to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure exactly what the directive is.
That's a whole nother opportunity for
Yeah,
communication.
I guess that's why I want to bring up my original point earlier, because that's what I noticed again from my own perspective, like reading all of the emails, is that what I notice, as Jenny mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, is not necessarily that there's a disagreement about what is being asked, but there's like serious concerns about communication and about decision making. And so I feel that as a board, like maybe what we can do is direct Sam to to initiate a change in behavior with regards to the communication and decision making with the program managers, because I think that's where I hear our power as a board is in directing Sam, and the greatest amount of tension and is with the communication.
And I don't, is it okay?
Jen's got her hand up. Oh, I know you have to go, Sarah, so we'll have you.
I do have to go. I would also add that a lot of what I'm hearing the 7-8 team and also some adolescent teams, so here's my faculty hat on, is responses to really specific words. So there's a lot of really engaged word parsing that's going on. The word ask, the word regular, the word continuous, rolling. There's a lot of uncertainty, and it could be cultural for our program in that an ask has a little bit more teeth in it than just an ask, or it feels like, so there's a lot of nuance, and I'm sorry that I have to leave, but I seriously,
we know.
That is what I'm reading. And I do have to go. So
thank you, Sarah.
Okay, you got it, Jenny. You got the grievance policy.
I got it. I'm good. Thank you.
Good luck, my friends. Here to help.
Ciao, Bella.
All above.
Jen?
Yeah.
Your hand is up.
Yes, it is. So I'm trying to lower my hand, but I can't. Okay. So I was listening to the 7 and 8 meeting also yesterday, and it's really clear to me that the staff weren't involved in the thinking through of the suggested, or however you want to, whatever verb you want to use, demanded changes, to in-person. That's clear that people were not brought along enough, or at all, maybe. And I'm on the outside, so I'm, I don't know where exactly communication is broken down, but I do see a spiral of semantic, like grinding into the semantics of language that we just, like, I don't think we have time for. Like, I don't think anybody has time for, and it's not helping anybody. But I get that it's offended people. But I just hope that we can move forward. We can look, we will be happy to look into this, but we have to move forward with some planning. It doesn't feel like, I don't sense that all the program managers are confused about what their role is, what their scope of authority is. I don't know that for a fact, but I haven't heard that from Jean, nor have I heard that from Melanie. I don't know if that's the case with Tammy, but so if I would just hesitate to throw this into this big blanket of, we need to direct Sam to clarify things with all the program managers. Because Jean is not asking for that. But I hear that that's an issue here, so we definitely need to do something. But I don't want to paint a picture of everything in the world breaking down when we've watched the elementary go back to school and they're doing it. And I mean, that's not easy. And I think we all were really pleased that it has gone well. And I know it was really hard, but so there is definitely a breakdown, but I just don't want to throw it all, into the same, under the same lens, I guess.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep.
So, wait, my hand.
I just want to
yeah.
highlight that the 7-8 circumstances are different. Well, so the elementary did their change in learning model and went back to in-person learning with the lead time and the planning with the staff. The upper adolescent, I believe, is going to provide their in-person learning through their spring intensives, which is 1 week. So the directive for the in-person learning comes really around the 7-8's plan for action projects, which were planned to be over a 4-week period and intended to be really an academic capstone to their year. And they've been mischaracterized over and over again as non-academic, non-learning. And it is really like thrown a wrench into our entire curriculum for those last 4 weeks. And it's just, I don't know how we do that and maintain the integrity of those action projects. So then all of a sudden we've got 3 or 4 weeks to plan for, where we don't really have a solid curriculum ready to go, which I don't think is good for anybody. And two, like, I want to bring back to mind, like, there are some significant concerns regarding the roles of the EAs and the things that they have been asked to do and the way that they have been treated. And that we as a 7-8 team have really said, like, it is not acceptable. And we are not going to, when we have other alternatives, when we have the possibility within us to not force people into a situation of choosing between their income and their health, that we shouldn't have to do that. And that is the role that, and people have been given that ultimatum. And so I think I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. And so I also agree with you, Jen, I don't think it's a completely like a miscommunication to program managers. I think the 7-8 is in a unique position at this time of the year.
So one quick point of order, and I think we might need to start level setting on this discussion a little bit. One is I think it's a point of privilege. I need to point out, Elizabeth, that I think you were speaking as faculty for that time, as opposed to a board hat. And that is a privilege that we don't necessarily have administration here at this time. So I just want to, for the record, note that. And again, reiterate that people not being treated well is not something that has come to anyone. There are no files, there's no records. So if people have noticed and not said, that's another issue entirely. But there have not been allegations that have not been addressed. And it's extremely important. I think that is understood. Okay, the other thing I needed to remind is what we are being asked. And what we are being asked is not to, frankly, fix anything. We're being asked to tell Sam and Wendy to do something, which they've already provided a response saying, sure, here's the 2 elements we need to figure out. Who should Tammy report to? Because she is the program director and needs to lead all of this. And then last, is this truly an opt-in model? If so, we can get those 5 days. And I need to point out, we need to approve a change to the calendar. We need to add another agenda item because that needs to happen ASAP. So this is what we were asked to do, was direct Sam and Wendy, let the 7-8 team do all of this and be in charge of all of this. And what we are seeing, the reply right here is, we don't have to ask them, they're ready. Make it, go for it, is what we're seeing on this response. Take over, it's yours. We need to decide on letter A, in light of, clearly what this letter is saying, do we need to have Tammy Lindbergh report into the board as opposed to Wendy? There is still that other question that I don't know. I guess, well, I think they've replied to it here. And again, Sam and Wendy, letter D, they're in full support of a May 17th start date for in-person learning after that week of planning. So we need to get that communicated, basically, if that is indeed the case. I do know above it does say formal in-person gatherings. So I think that, again, getting semantics here, but the phrase is the following a week of planning, which is the issue in terms of being able to be allowed to do that by Minnesota Department of Education.
It's gatherings, learning. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't say formal in-person model, right? So I think that's,
yeah.
The hitch is following a week of planning, because we don't have the leeway to provide a week of planning per the Department of Education without a model change into everyone who wants to could opt into in-person. I think that's what we're hitting a semantic wall that we cannot get around for that one. Everything else, they're like, go for it. We don't have to direct them to do a thing. It's resolved. We just need to decide how to direct Tammy in terms of management. Does anyone, I see Elena, then Katie, and then I would just ask, does anyone have a different take on that? And how do we direct or respond to part D down at the bottom? So Elena, then Katie, I think. Sorry if I got it wrong.
I just wanted to reply to Jen's comment about program managers, because I can speak from my board hat, and I'm not going to talk about it in great detail, but I would say that this is not the only concern that has been expressed to me as a board member. So that's all
Elena,
I'm going to say.
Guys, we are in a public meeting, so this is not an airing of grievances. I want to be clear on that. So if that's another issue, then we need to open up another grievance issue. But this is, I think we need to be mindful that this is a public meeting for our board. And if some of this is HR related, it needs to go to HR. If some of it's a grievance, it needs to go in the proper procedure to be followed. But what we cannot start doing is airing grievances during a public board meeting. Okay, Katie.
Yeah, I guess question and then a statement and then a question. When we added this to the agenda, we agreed to discuss it, not to decide on anything.
Oh, that's a good point.
There was that. So if we're now deciding to take action, we actually have to re-amend our agenda that we already approved. So if we're gonna make a motion level action to change something, we might make a consensus-based decision that the executive committee is going to look into this and walk through guide this into the grievance policy if necessary. But I didn't vote to make a motion on this tonight. I don't think we have enough information in our hands to make a motion to the extent of whether or not to change the calendar and whether or not to redirect, up until this point, Sam is our employee as the board. So this will be my statement part. And Sam is our employee. He has been our loyal employee for many years. He's agreed to stay on board with the school through this period of transition, even though he was meant to leave at the end of last year. I do think we want to remember that everybody is operating with the best of intentions, and that if there are issues to be had and resolved, let's resolve those in a way that assume positive intent on behalf of the faculty and on behalf of our administration. And then a question on the calendar is, are we talking about these 5 planning days being days off of school where there would be no student learning? Are we talking about removing 5 days of school?
Yeah. Like for elementary, yes.
So if that question does happen to get discussed or called to the table, I would say, what is the impact of a child not having any structure or any school for 5 days versus having an imperfect return to in-person events? So is it more impactful to have 5 days with no structure or a less than perfect in-person gathering? So that's all. I would just put that out there as a question to think about.
And Elizabeth Alvarez, I see your hand. I think one important note is nothing in this letter that they wrote mandates this group. I mean, I've got to say, I think everyone could benefit from some better communication together. But again, to your point, Katie, we don't have to force anybody to do anything. We opened up a discussion. And Elizabeth Alvarez, go ahead. So
no,
patient.
I'm sorry. I'm getting really lost. So I'm just trying to clarify for myself. Because I feel like, as everyone's acknowledged, we're kind of losing sight. So I understand there's this one thing, and like Katie just, none of us agreed to make any sort of decision about anything. So I think that's important. And for my own clarity, so what they're saying, I know one of the 7-8 level concerns was that they were only being given 3 days of planning in order to make this change, to offer like in-person options, not in-person learning as a whole. So they would have some experience offered to them, but it would not be in-person model shift. However, if they were to give the whole 5 days, they would have to offer a full in-person model shift. So, okay, so everyone's nodding. So thank you for, I think I'm reiterating what people have said, but I was just getting really lost.
I think so. Right, Jenny? Right, Jenny? I think.
One more time?
I think so. I think that's what you said.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Such as it is.
I mean, that was, elementary had the 5 days, but it's because we are doing an entire like actual model. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. So that was just for my own clarity of this. I think too, we're kind of getting into this debate about if we're going to do that. That doesn't seem like our thing to discuss or decide right now about whether we're going to institute those days of planning. It seems like they need to discuss that with admin. If they want that 5 days bad enough, are they willing to offer a whole in-person model shift for the last 3 weeks of school?
Right.
And if not, I think what Katie said, is it better than to offer just, maybe it's not a perfect system and it doesn't go exactly as you would hope, but honestly, I think that's the world we're living in right now. At least that's how I feel as a teacher from my perspective. So I guess, okay, that's it.
No, thank you. That was I think that was a good reset. Because we've hit a lot of points. And Mike, I see your hand. And then, go ahead.
Sure. I'll just kind of get straight to the point here, like A, B, C, D. My opinion, A is regards to Tammy reporting to the board. The answer is no, because Tammy would report to the head of school, and the head of school would actually report to us, because that's actually how the structure is. I don't think it's wise for us to actually make any changes here, because especially now, since we're actually in the transition of getting a new head of school. So if we get a new head of school, then what's going to happen when things don't work out between them? Is Tammy going to come report to us to the board again? We're just going to go ahead and like create a bigger mess. Yep. And regards to B, C, and D, I mean, it looks like those concerns actually already have been addressed already here. So as far as I see here, I mean, the power is given to the staff to be able to actually do what they need to do. So I think what we need to do worry next is basically just to address the concerns of the heavy language that was actually, the grievances actually were presented for.
I think that's a great point, Mike. I think what we're seeing is there is some, and I appreciate about Tammy's recording. I think it's a great call. Things can be difficult, but sometimes we have to figure that out and grow from it together on both sides and the board. But I think Sam has replied to these responses. I don't know that we as the board need to do anything. They've indicated they're totally willing to take on what said. There is a caveat to part D, which I don't believe is our call to make tonight. I think that is something that needs to be determined by the 7-8 team, that wants the autonomy to decide all of this, then that call has to be made. I think, just to reiterate, per the Department of Education, any planning days are because we're switching to a completely open in-person model for anyone who wants to opt in. So that's an important distinction. And again, and if that happens, we are going to need to have a special meeting to update the calendar to get it done in time. Yay! But I don't think we can make that call tonight. It's not our call to make.
You just said an important thing, any planning days, not 5 or whatever, but just any.
My understanding is adding extra planning days at this point would have to follow the Department of Education's rules, which are model changes. Yeah. And again, it's not our definition of what is a model change. It's the Department of Education's definition. I mean, it's a legal issue at that point. So my question is, I don't think we have anything to do besides the very important thing. The exec committee is going to be following up on what has been happening to staff, whether it's licensed or non-licensed staff. We need to identify what has been happening and how on earth can whatever culture, if there's a cultural issue or what have you, how can we remediate that? Because that is unacceptable wholesale. But it looks like Sam and Wendy are ready to accommodate. Jen, did you still have your hand up? I know Elena does now. Was that still your hand from before? Yes.
It was from before, but I just wanted to, I actually thought of something else, which is that my question is still whether or not Tammy wants to do the things that we're saying she is approved to do.
I don't think that's our problem tonight. We gotta start drawing some lines. Not our problem.
Right, fair enough.
Not for tonight.
Done.
Yep.
I would like to make a motion to request that Sam clarify with Tammy her duties. That's it. And if anyone wants to second it, they can.
And we really need a clarification about the fact whether we are being asked to change to a learning model that is all in person, or whether we are going to have the ability to provide in-person gatherings that are staffed and provided for in the way that we have the ability to do it and maintain the integrity of the curriculum.
So I think that Sam has responded by saying that is completely up to you guys. That's what I saw. Tammy decides that. Tammy decides the staffing. You guys decide what you want to do. You plan the things. I don't know how it can be any more clear.
It's literally asking for autonomy to design them.
Yeah, and you got it.
Yep.
Yeah, so Elena, can you repeat your motion, please?
I would like to make a motion that the board requests that Sam clarify with Tammy the her decision-making duties. So I'm not, I think that's kind of part A.
Well, I'm looking at this here, just discussion of the motion here is that it's already been addressed here that, he's allowing Tammy to have autonomy over this program here. So, I mean, he's not going to be in charge of, well, this is what you can or cannot do. He's giving her autonomy to run that program. Am I wrong here?
That's exactly what I read.
That's what I read. And that's what's being requested.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I don't see, it says, ask for the board to direct Sam and Wendy. They've already listed right there that we don't have to direct them. They're ready and they're willing.
So
I feel like it's almost an asked and answered situation.
So Elena, is your motion really just getting at this? The board basically directs Sam as our employee to engage directly with Tammy and basically work this out. So we're asking Sam in his capacity as head of school to bring together the people that are necessary to clarify any miscommunication. And
well, or do we need Sam? Do we need to direct Sam to hash this out with these signers?
Right.
Because Tammy, again, isn't even on the letter.
Signer on this. So that is a important thing. I know it's not my problem to solve, but it's quite relevant because Sam is saying, you know who can solve this? I'm going to give it all to Tammy, and Tammy's not on this letter. Right. So I don't know how she feels.
And I think that's an excellent point because it's not just on Tammy. And when we wrote that letter, it was with the understanding that we didn't want to have it all put on Tammy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
guess I do recommend that the executive committee then look into this matter as immediately as possible, and begin that process as immediate. For April 5th is right around the corner here.
Well, here's what I think. I don't see what the executive committee has to do. The 7-8 team is asking for autonomy. Sam is saying go for it.
I'm talking about the reiterating what you had said. The very strong language that has been used.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's gonna be addressed.
Yes,
So I think
we have an
the
exec meeting
committee
on
should
Thursday.
work-
Yes, it will be on the agenda.
Should meet with Sam, and
And the 13 signers.
and as follow the process, but
Yep. Yes.
yeah.
That does feel like a separate thing from the planning and the in-person questions though, right?
I think there's two parts, right? One is, what has bubbled up to the point where the communication is broken down. Why is it coming to us in this way anyway? Clearly, that's indicative of an issue. I think because it's a staffing related issue, this isn't the appropriate forum to ask, for the specificity that we need. That needs to be handled, I believe, by the executive committee in their role as the direct overseer of SAM and staffing issues. So that is one thing. And then the second thing is the timing of this. And so if it comes to pass that in opening up the lines of communication, that there's a question on the table that would change the calendar, then the executive committee would have to get involved to call a special meeting of the board to change the calendar, right? So
that's correct. Yep.
So it is kind of two different jobs for the executive committee. I'm kind of glad I'm not on it anymore, but if you need my help, I'll be there for you.
Don't you want to join? We have a spot.
There's a spot.
Yeah, I think it's important call. The 7-8 team has requested, but we're missing their manager in the middle.
And their manager,
which I think is why Sam is calling it out of, they've got a manager, you can take charge of this. And that is not something we need to get in the middle of. And Sam is indicating, and Wendy by proxy are indicating their willingness to turn it over.
Okay. Yeah.
That was lively, wasn't it? Okay. Deep breath. Shake it out. I feel like we've had a lot of discussion. Again, we will be, the very important follow-up on the exec committee side is the grievances. We do have our next meeting is on Thursday. We moved it up so we could have spring break. So again, obviously it is public. Feel free to participate. Anything that is specific, I should advise that names employees or gets specific in that will have to be a closed discussions. Those are not public meetings. I also want to reassure anyone attending who is concerned about coming to us with grievances. Those are always held in confidence. That is not public meeting material and no one needs to worry about that being breached by this committee or this board. Oh my gosh, okay. I think all we have left is pretty easy stuff, right? Maybe, please God. Okay.
We got governance.
Oh, but it's easy. It's easy.
Okay.
Could someone else share the screen? Because I'm going to bomb Zoom again and then heck's going to break loose. So it's board elections. I will start in the meantime. So we're a little behind. I know that's shocking this year. And we are required to provide 30-day public notice of board elections. And we have to have a board vote to approve the date before we can put it on the calendar. So here we are, looking at April 29th and 30th for board elections, which means I'm so sorry, but we'll have to have a special meeting to discuss the board, to accept the results, because the election will happen after our April board meeting, because that was cutting it too close. Apologies, that's completely on me and our invisible secretary for not being aware of that. So
and can't we accept them at the May meeting though?
Oh, it's pretty late. It's almost the end of school by then. Is that okay?
It shouldn't, I mean, they don't go into, their term doesn't begin until July 1, correct?
That's a great point. I bet we can. All right, one less. I'm sure nothing else will come up that warrants a special meeting.
We've approved board elections in the past this late.
We have.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yes, ignore that part. We'll do it at the May meeting. So what we have open is we have 2 teacher standard 3-year terms, and a huge kudos because you already said you would, so there's no backing out now after tonight, Elizabeth Padilla Mormon. She said she would re-up for an official 3-year term after this one glorious year. And we do have an open position. Sarah Hansen, who has been part of the board for a very long time, is going to keep on the policy group, but not re-up for a 2nd consecutive term. So we will have an opening for a teacher. Also, Jen Hanlon Ash can officially be elected into a standard 3-year term. Again, she was appointed to an open term. And then we do have a few special elections. We have a 1-year term for our community position, which we actually checked the bylaws. It could actually also be another parent. So we may see if we can recruit another parent. That's a 1-year term. Maddie Brossart is completing an appointed term, and so he'll have a special election for next year to complete out the term he is filling. So what we need to do today is approve the election dates of April 29th and 30th. It must be 30 days public notice, and we must hold elections while school is in session. And then I'll go ahead as acting secretary, I'll go ahead and work on sending out the message to advise everyone about elections, as well as encourage people to sign up, and we'll get the ballot drafted. And then again, ignore special meeting. We'll just provide the election results at the next board meeting. That was fast. So what is on the agenda right now is to decide to approve those board election dates of April 29th and 30th. If anyone thinks we should.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Jen?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I should read it. We're voting whether or not to accept the board election dates of April 29th and 30th. Sorry, Jen?
Yes.
Thank you. Elizabeth Badil Mormon?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez?
Yes.
Elena?
Yes.
Hey, Maddie, did you hear what we were talking about? Do you want to just vote?
Can abstain from this vote.
Perfect. Thank you for your integrity. And Jenny Williams votes yes. Okay, so moved. We will hold board elections April 29th and 30th. And I will follow on with the getting that underway. Please think about teachers you know who might want to be part of it, as well as a community member or a parent who might be interested in joining this endless party that is board service. All right, Stacy, award for waiting the longest to get to your parts.
Okay, I'll be really quick with the compliance. The episode or task list is just this meeting's agenda and minutes. And so that's all fine. I'll click the buttons for that tomorrow. And that's it. Should I just move on to my next item? If anybody doesn't have questions.
No questions.
Great. So we have a first read policy for you this month. And so if you could take a look, and that means, just to remember, a first read means we do not vote on it. We just look at it and comment as needed. And our policy has been revised based on recommendation from lawyers who are knowledgeable in this law, because the state, no, there was a Supreme Court case, sorry, policy committee members can maybe speak to this better than myself, but the Supreme Court had a ruling that impacted how we are allowed to have our PTO policy. And so any change you see in here was literally put in by the lawyers who understood how the Supreme Court ruled and what that impact on our policy should be. So this particular policy is part of the employee handbook. So we would include it in that, but we wanted to bring it to you ahead of time so that you can see the changes. In this name here, Adam Fruden, if you see that, that is the lawyer.
I was wondering who that was. So thanks for clarifying that.
And just to clarify, in regards to the policy here for the employee handbook, it would not be changed for this year, but it'll be suggested change would be changed for the next year.
And as a reminder, this is a first read, and as Stacy mentioned, you can put your comments and questions into that document out on Drive When it comes back second read, the expectation would be that you have reviewed it, you've had a chance to check in on questions, and we're ready to vote on it. So you have time.
Yeah, and I, Elizabeth, I see you have a lot of questions in here and I don't have direct answers for you. I'm not going to go through one by one and answer them today. But I think that, you know, prior to us asking you to vote on it, answers would be put in.
Great.
The answers would be put in on the document. Is that where we would look for answers?
I think so.
Okay.
Thanks, Stacy. Any other questions for Stacy?
Can on that,
Yeah,
adding to that same, it seems like some of the questions, and I'm just orienting, so I'll give it a good read later, but some of the questions that I'm seeing are ones that it seems like would be best answered not in reply to the question or comment or whatever, but in the document itself. What is the balance of that? Because anyone reading it, we would want them to have that clarity as well as us, right?
I think depending on what it is, yes.
Yeah.
Because some of the questions might lead to us clarifying language. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
I think the policy committee, when we meet again, we'll go through these questions and be able to come up with answers or reach out to our lawyers to help get answers if we need to.
Yes.
Action on this. Was there a question?
Are there any other questions for Stacy? Again, we don't have to vote on it today. It's just first read, first look. I highly encourage you again, though, to do take a look at it. If you do have questions, this is the chance to get them in. So we come back for second read. It's not a surprise to anyone. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. All right, moving to the, I can't even talk anymore. The consent agenda. The consent agenda consisted of last month's meeting minutes. Are we okay to approve it? I guess is the question that I cannot get out.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, verbal roll call. Let's see, Maddie?
Yes.
Elena?
Yes.
Elizabeth Alvarez?
Yes.
Elizabeth Badillo Mormon?
Yes.
Mike Hang?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And Jenny Williams votes yes. So moved, the consent agenda is approved. Just a quick note in terms of April meeting agenda. Please note below, and this will turn into a separate agenda. Oops, sorry, getting a phone call. This will move into a separate agenda document itself, but we do have all these other things that were supposed to be tonight that we moved. So April 13th, that will be that meeting. Also, we'll have an inform on what the latest is in moving into both the status of our interim head of school, accepting, as well as next steps for the permanent head of school search committee. Possible decision in the end of April, the official board meeting, April 27th, on the FY22, bless you, draft budget proposal, because that'll be at the April 13th meeting for first reads. And forget the special meeting about the board election results. We'll do it in May. Okay, reflection. Would anyone love to discuss the effectiveness of our meeting today? I would like to note that we are only like 10 minutes behind schedule, which is astonishing. Yeah. So kudos to everyone. No, I'm sorry. That was my reflection of meeting effectiveness. Would anyone else like to share anything? Oh, 5 minutes, not 10.
I'm asking if anyone would be willing to be a mentor to me in board communication. I think I really appreciated that when Maddie was onboarded, there was a motion to have a mentor, and I'm also pretty new to the board, and so I think a reflection that I have is like, I feel like I'm still learning a lot about my role as a board member, and I would love some mentorship in that.
That's a great idea, Elena. I think, yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, everyone here except for Katie, I think was new since the beginning of the school year.
I would be really happy to do that, Elena, for
Can you
you.
do it for all of us, please?
Thanks, Katie.
Seriously, I was just gonna say, I'm new.
Okay.
Sign up.
Sure.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm happy to do that. I've learned a lot in my years on the GRS board and previous boards, so I'd be happy to offer that.
Well, also, Elizabeth Alvarez says that her internet crashed.
Oh,
that's all. I'm trying to rejoin, but it won't connect in time. Sorry.
That's okay. We get it.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for having the flexibility to be able to hear a staff concern and put it into the agenda and even suspend our policy because it was really important to treat it in a timely way and to treat those staff's concerns with concern and care. So
Thank you, Elizabeth. I agree. I think the board choosing to react as opposed to we'll table this and get back to it. We'll have another meeting, we'll talk about it later is a strong response. Where, yeah, so I agree. Thank you for encouraging it. Would anyone like to adjourn? Oh, Katie, did you have it? Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to so much thank the executive committee. A huge accomplishment tonight to identify an interim head of school for next year. And I think we just want to acknowledge all the work that went into that once again. And, it seemed like a fairly painless discussion here, but I know how much work has gone into that. So thank you all very much for your work, and that felt really positive.
Good. Thank you. Okay, now would anyone like to adjourn? Oh, Mike says hand up. Oh, come on, man.
All right. Okay. So, Katie, I think you actually have a lot of great information and experience that you can go ahead and provide all of us. I'm wondering if there's possibility of like a possible workshop that you could do that all the board can attend, and maybe get some training in regards to this as well.
Yeah. I'm willing to entertain that. I can work with the executive committee on what would be appropriate there, and maybe doing something formalized as part of next year's onboarding process as well. So something to get us through the year here, and then formalizing that as we move forward. I'd be happy to work with the executive committee on that.
Thank you.
So great. Thank you. Now would anybody like to adjourn? Perhaps.
So moved.
I have a point of question is, where is the recording? Is I totally had trouble concentrating during the meeting, so I want to make sure my minutes are good. Where can I find the recording of this meeting? In the folder?
We have to download it to the YouTube channel.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Available. So I've asked Lindsay to give me, I think it's on her cloud, so I asked her to give me the link so I can make it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because I missed a lot of it today, so I'm sorry about that.
There was a lot. Yeah.
Maddie, I think you were saying something, but you were on mute.
No, I was just, we have a YouTube channel. Is that, or is it a private one?
We do have a school YouTube account that's run through our communications at email address. So that way, all of the public forums and stuff, Charlie will download them and upload them to the YouTube channel. Because the things what we download to the cloud in Zoom, we have a limited amount of space that we can do that, but we can do unlimited Zoom or YouTube. So yeah.
Now would anybody like to adjourn?
Maddie, motion.
Anybody?
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, we're gonna vote. We're gonna vote quick. Maddie?
Aye. Yes.
Aye. Mike?
Abstain.
Killing me, man. Fine. Elena, you can stay out as long as you want.
Sorry, yes.
So punchy. Katie?
Yes.
Elizabeth Badillo Mormon?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And Jenny Williams votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you guys. That was a marathon. We did very well.
Thank you.
Well done. Be well. Have a good night.